Between the 13th and 14th centuries, something strange happened to planet Earth. A huge amount of carbon dioxide vanished from the atmosphere, enough to measurably cool the climate. Scientists found the evidence 800 years later, locked in ice cores pulled from the Arctic. It wasn't a volcano. It wasn't a shift in the sun. It was one man, and the tens of millions of people he killed. His name was Genghis Khan, and in the space of one lifetime, he built the largest connected land empire humanity has ever seen, by force, by fear, and by an army unlike anything the world had faced before. We don't actually know when Genghis Khan was born. We don't know exactly what he looked like. The Mongols had no writing system when he rose to power, so almost nothing about his early life was written down while he was alive. Everything we know comes from accounts written decades later by people who either feared him or worshipped him. What we do know is this: by the age of 8, he'd been abandoned by his own tribe and left to die on one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. By the time he died, he ruled more territory than any single person in human history has ruled before or since. An empire 4 times the size of Alexander the Great's, twice the size of Rome's at its peak. This is the story of how that happened, and why understanding it means understanding one of the most effective and most brutal military machines ever built. He was born Temujin, not Genghis Khan. That title came later, earned, not inherited. His father was a minor tribal chieftain named Yesugai. His mother, Hoelun, had been kidnapped from a rival tribe and taken as a wife, which was, by the standards of 12th century Mongolia, an unremarkable way to start a marriage. The steppe was not a gentle place. Tribes raided each other for horses, women, and grazing land in an endless cycle that had gone on for centuries before Temujin was even born. When Temujin was around 9, his father took him to be betrothed to a girl from a neighboring tribe, a girl named Borta. On the journey home, Yesugai stopped at a Tatar camp and was poisoned, likely in revenge for an earlier raid. Within days, he was dead. And in a society built entirely around clan loyalty, a fatherless boy with no ally to protect him was worth nothing. His father's own tribe threw the family out. Temujin, his mother, and his siblings were left to survive alone on a landscape where most people couldn't survive alone at all. No horses, no herds, no protection. They ate roots. They ate berries. Eventually, they ate whatever fish and small game they could catch, foraging along riverbanks that better-equipped families wouldn't have bothered with. It should have been a death sentence. It wasn't. What strikes me most about this part of the story isn't that Temujin survived. Plenty of abandoned children on the steppe didn't, and history simply forgot them. It's that surviving this specific kind of humiliation seems to have shaped exactly the ruler he became. Someone who spent the rest of his life making absolutely certain he would never be powerless again, whatever the cost to anyone standing in his way. As a teenager, Temujin killed his own older half-brother, Begter, in a dispute over the family's food supply. A stolen fish and a stolen lark, according to the sources, was enough to trigger it. It's a brutal detail, and it's an important one, because it's the first time history shows us exactly how far he was willing to go to secure his position. It would not be the last. His growing reputation eventually got him captured by his father's old tribe, the Taichiud, who locked a wooden restraint called a kangu around his neck to keep him from escaping or defending himself. He escaped anyway, by waiting for his guard to get drunk during a festival, then knocking him unconscious with the kang itself and disappearing into the night, hiding in a river with only his face above the waterline, while search parties passed within feet of him. At 15, now legally an adult, he married Borta, the woman his father had betrothed him to years earlier. It was, briefly, a normal life. It didn't last. A rival tribe, the Merkit, the same one his mother had originally been taken from, raided his camp and kidnapped Borta in retaliation for an old grievance passed down a generation. Temujin didn't have an army of his own yet, so he went and borrowed one. He convinced two powerful allies, his father's old blood brother Togrul and a childhood friend named Jamukha, to lend him a combined force of roughly 40,000 men. Borta was rescued, and Temujin, for the first time, had proven he could raise an army and win with it. That single campaign became the foundation. Everything else was built on. What made Temujin dangerous wasn't just ruthlessness, it was organization. Mongol society, like most societies of the time, promoted people based on birth. Noble blood meant command. Common blood meant obedience. Temujin threw that out. He promoted based purely on ability, regardless of tribe, regardless of former enemy status. His most famous appointment was a blacksmith's son named Subutai, a man with zero noble blood, who Temujin made his chief military strategist. Subutai would go on to conquer more territory than any general in history, before or since. More than Alexander, more than Caesar, more than Napoleon. He commanded campaigns from the Pacific coast of China to the gates of Vienna, and he started as a servant boy, tending horses. He also changed how loot was divided. Traditionally, the chieftain took the largest share, and whatever was left trickled down through the ranks depending on rank and favor. Temujin split it equally. His soldiers kept exactly what he kept. It's a small detail with a massive effect. It bought him an army that was almost fanatically loyal, because for the first time, a common warrior's fortune depended entirely on his own performance, not on the birth he couldn't control. This is the part of the story that usually gets skipped in favor of the battle scenes, and I think that's a mistake. A meritocratic promotion system and equal spoils sharing sound almost modern, closer to a well-run company than a medieval warband. It's genuinely one of the more forward-thinking pieces of Genghis Khan's leadership, and it's arguably the real reason the Mongol army outperformed every empire it faced, not just the horses. Not everyone loved the new system. Mongol nobles who lost their traditional privileges turned against him, including some of his oldest allies. Jamukha himself, the friend who once helped rescue Borta, eventually became his bitterest rival, leading a coalition specifically to stop him. He crushed them anyway. By 1206, every tribe on the Mongolian steppe stood united under a single ruler, and Temujin was given a new title at a great assembly called a Kurultai, Genghis Khan, roughly universal ruler or fierce ruler, depending on the translation. A unified Mongolia gave Genghis Khan an army of roughly 100,000 men, completely self-sufficient in a way no settled civilization's army could match. No supply lines, no baggage trains to protect, no slow-moving carts of grain that could be cut off and starved out. Just hunters, herders, and horses that could survive almost anywhere on the open steppe. Each warrior brought several horses on campaign, rotating mounts to keep them fresh, covering distances that stunned every enemy they met. In an emergency, warriors could even open a small vein in their horse's neck and drink directly from it to stay alive on a long crossing, then seal the wound and keep riding. This was an army that could move faster, farther, and longer than anything standing in its way. What that army had never encountered before were cities. Actual walled cities. The kind that dominated northern China under the Jin dynasty. Stone fortifications, moats, garrisons numbering in the tens of thousands. And for a nomadic people who had never needed to build anything permanent in their entire history, walls were an entirely new kind of problem, one that horses and archery alone couldn't solve. Their first attempt to solve it, diverting a river to flood a city, went badly. They ended up flooding their own camp instead, a genuinely embarrassed failure for an army that would soon be the most feared on Earth. But they adapted fast, faster than almost any army in history has adapted to an unfamiliar form of warfare. They captured enemy engineers and forced them to teach Mongol soldiers how to build the very siege weapons being used against them. Trebuchets, battering rams, counterweight catapults capable of hurling stones, and even early gunpowder devices borrowed from Chinese arsenals. Within a few years, an army that had never built a permanent structure in its life was operating some of the most advanced siege technology on Earth, because it had simply taken it from everyone it conquered. This became the defining pattern of the entire Mongol war machine. Absorb the best of every culture it defeated, discard what didn't work, and turn it back against the next enemy in line. Chinese engineers, Persian astronomers, Muslim administrators, all of them ended up serving the empire that had conquered them. By 1215, Beijing had fallen. The Jin capital burned for a month. It was the first time in history that a nomadic steppe army had broken through and permanently subdued a major Chinese dynasty's heartland, and it sent a message across the entire continent that nothing built by human hands was truly safe from this force. In 1218, Genghis Khan tried something unusual for him: diplomacy. He sent a caravan of over 400 merchants to open trade with the neighboring Khwarezmian Empire, a wealthy Muslim power controlling much of modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Central Asia. He wanted trade, not war. The Khwarezmian Empire was enormous, and even Genghis Khan preferred profitable peace over an unnecessary two-front conflict. A local governor in the border city of Otrar had the merchants robbed and executed, seizing their goods for himself. When Genghis Khan sent envoys to demand an explanation and compensation, the Khwarezmian Shah, Muhammad II, had the lead envoy's head shaved and sent back as an insult, and the others killed outright. That decision may be the single worst diplomatic miscalculation in medieval history. Genghis Khan split his forces into 5 armies and unleashed a campaign that by some estimates, killed around 15 million people in under 2 years, wiping out entire cities so thoroughly that some regions of Central Asia reportedly took centuries to fully recover their pre-invasion populations. Samarkand fell. Bukhara fell. Urgench, one of the largest cities on Earth at the time, was destroyed so completely that the Amu Darya River was diverted to flood the ruins afterward. It wasn't just conquest anymore. It was a message aimed at anyone who might consider testing him again, delivered with a thoroughness that bordered on the industrial. It's worth sitting with how disproportionate this response was. One arrogant governor's decision to rob a trade caravan effectively ended an empire and cost millions of lives. That's not really a story about military genius. It's a story about how much unchecked power one furious individual can wield when nothing stands in his way. Genghis Khan's brutality wasn't incidental to his success. In campaigns like this one, it was the entire strategy. Terror as a weapon, deliberately engineered to make the next city surrender without a fight rather than face the same fate. Genghis Khan died in 1227 during the campaign against the Tangut Kingdom of Western Xia. The exact cause is still debated, with theories ranging from a fall from his horse to illness to assassination. His body was buried in an unmarked location that to this day, no one has ever confirmed finding, in keeping with Mongol tradition, and, some say, deliberate secrecy to protect the grave from desecration. But his empire didn't die with him. His descendants kept expanding it for another 140 years, until at its peak, it covered more than 9 million square miles and roughly a quarter of the entire world's population, stretching from Korea in the east to Hungary and Poland in the west, from Siberia in the north to the Persian Gulf in the south. His grandson, Kublai Khan, would go on to conquer the rest of China and found the Yuan dynasty, hosting travelers like Marco Polo at a court more sophisticated than most of Europe could imagine. Another branch of the family, the Golden Horde, ruled Russia for over 2 centuries, shaping its political culture in ways historians still trace today. It remains, to this day, the largest connected land empire in human history. Bigger than the British Empire at its territorial peak, bigger than the Roman Empire, bigger than any empire built before or since. Along the way, it also did something almost nobody expects from a conquering horde. It protected freedom of religion across its territory, allowing Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, and Taoists to worship without persecution as long as they paid taxes and stayed loyal. It revived and secured the Silk Road, clearing it of bandits and warlords so thoroughly that a saying emerged: a virgin carrying a sack of gold could walk from one end of the empire to the other unmolested. And it spread ideas, goods, and technology across 2 continents faster than at any point before it. Paper money, printing, gunpowder, and astronomical knowledge all moved along Mongol-secured trade routes into new regions of the world. But an empire built entirely around one family's ability to hold it together was never going to last forever. Within a few generations, Genghis Khan's descendants fractured the empire into rival khanates: the Yuan in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Golden Horde in Russia, fighting each other as often as they fought outsiders. What one man built through sheer will, his heirs couldn't hold through cooperation. By the late 14th century, the unified empire that once terrified the known world had splintered into competing successor states, each a shadow of what it had once been part of. Genghis Khan is remembered in the West mostly as a symbol of brutal conquest, and the body count backs that up. But he's also remembered elsewhere, particularly in Mongolia itself, as a unifier, a meritocrat, and a ruler who was, in some genuine ways, centuries ahead of his time in how he organized power, rewarded loyalty, and governed a vast, diverse population. Both of those things are true at once. That's usually how history actually works. If this kind of scale of empire story is your thing, the fall of the Roman army is just as brutal, and it started exactly the same way every empire on this channel eventually falls, from the inside. Click it and keep watching.